Good morning. When I first heard the true story of missionary Jim Elliot, I was deeply impacted. Why would a young man, and really a team of young men, leave their families and the comforts of their lives to travel to a foreign nation to face the unknown and risk their lives? Why? Well, because they answered the call, as each of us have done as Christians, to sacrifice our lives, to take the gospel of Jesus Christ wherever the Lord sends us. The goal of our lives is not long life. The goal of our lives is not earthly wealth or success. The goal of our lives is to glorify God and serve Him and His kingdom wherever He wants us to go. Well, for these men, in preparing for a life of service to the Lord, they learned about a group of people in Ecuador, in South America, who, as far as anyone knew, had never heard the gospel. And as they prayed for them, their hearts were drawn to them, and they felt compelled by God to go and take the gospel message to them. They prepared, learned their location, secured a plane, and went to try and make contact with these people. Jim Elliot had only been married a couple of years. He and his wife Elizabeth had a little girl. Their plans were to eventually move to the region and become missionaries to those people. They had grown to care about them and even love them before they had even met them. Prayer does that. God does that in our hearts, doesn't He? So there were 5 men who had devoted their lives to this mission. The year was 1956. They had such high hopes, and rightly so, for they were serving the King of Kings. They kissed their wives goodbye, their families, and off they went. Now, with technology being limited, they would be out of touch for a time. They flew to the region and landed on a beach they had earlier scouted. They stepped out in faith, hoping to find open doors for the gospel. They did not know that their lives would become the open doors. You see, when they stepped out onto the beach and began to look around, the native people had heard the plane and hid nearby to see what was coming. It turns out that rather than welcoming them, the natives feared them and thought they were dangerous cannibals coming to hurt them. So they did what people often do when they're afraid. They reacted and defended themselves. They threw spears at the men and killed them all. Elizabeth Elliot, the other wives, and the families would wait 5 days until they received the word that the men would not be coming home. Elizabeth would grieve. She would ask God why. And in time, she would look to the Lord for His guidance from His word, by His Spirit. And of all things, the Lord led her to go to those very people who had killed her husband. He was calling her and a new team to continue the mission of reaching these people, building a rapport with them, learning their language, and then sharing the gospel with them. So Elizabeth went, along with another martyr's wife, Nate Saint. They moved there and began the mission work of sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ with them. And if you're familiar with the story, the people this time did not fear them, but instead reluctantly welcomed them. God honored their obedience. As they learned the language, the gospel was shared, and many of the Wurani Indians, including the chief of that tribe, came to saving faith in Christ. Elizabeth Elliot learned to love the very people who killed her husband. She served them. She would even bring back some of them to the United States so that together they could share this miraculous story, one that began with tragedy but turned into a triumph for God's kingdom. Today, that witness throughout the nation of Ecuador continues. And Elizabeth? Well, her first of 20 books that were written over her 89 years of life is titled Shadow of the Almighty. It's taken from our psalm this week, Psalm 91. The book is her commendable teaching of the passage, in which she explains how the psalm, it's not a promise from trials and tragedy, but rather a promise of the Lord's abiding presence and strength through trials and tragedy. The first two verses are the summation of the psalm. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, you are my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. And from that, this week we are learning a confession of faith. Lord, you are my refuge, my fortress, and my God in whom I trust. Would you say that with me? Lord, you are my refuge, my fortress, and my God in whom I trust. As we walk daily close with God, as if his shadow is cast upon us, we learn to see that he really is a refuge for us, someone we can run to in our times of need. He is a fortress, able to protect and sustain us so that we are not undone by the difficulties in this life. Well, I'd like you to pause for some moments and just allow this song to minister encouragement and inspire your faith. God bless you.
Come every soul by sin oppressed, there's mercy with the Lord, and he will surely give you rest by trusting in his word. Only trust him, only trust him, only trust him now. He will save you, he will save you, he will save you now. For Jesus shed his precious blood, rich blessings to bestow. Plunge now into the crimson flood that washes white as snow. Only trust him, only trust him, only trust him now. He will save you, he will save you, he will save you now. Yes, Jesus is the truth, the way that leads you into rest. Believe in him without delay, and you are fully blessed. Only trust him, only trust him, only trust him now. He will save you, he will save you, he will save you now. Only trust him, only trust him, only trust him now. He will save you,